I read today that brain rot was like one of the most used words in 2024.
I feel like it's no coincidence that I feel my brain rotted more in 2024 than any other year.
What about 2020?
I don't know. I got really into making cheese in 2020. I feel like I learned a lot. 2024 was the year I just kind of gave up emotionally.
I don't think you made a single cheese this year.
I make like a quick and dirty cheese, but
only dirty cheese, only brain rot cheese.
Brain cheese. I haven't been making a ton of. No, I haven't been learning new things. I'm not interested. No new things.
That's the mantra for 2025. Which that's why we have a rerun of 2016.
Well, yeah, it really shouldn't be the mantra because then that's how we end up with it, like a dictatorship. No new things equals same.
Equals time loop, which what is a dictatorship if not just a time loop?
Yeah, that's kind of true. It's like Groundhog's Day, but the same guy becomes president over and over and over again.
The groundhog?
I would accept the groundhog
Expand
as my president.
For me,
I
please.
cannot.
Okay.
Anyway, hello and welcome to Untitled Podcast with Art. My name is Chris.
My name is Simon.
And we have an important announcement.
What's that?
It is that within a week or 2 or 3 or a few episodes or something, we will no longer be called Untitled Podcast with Art. This is why we're changing it. I can't say it good. Simon, what will we be called?
If we really, really want to create some drama here, you could say that this is the final episode of Untitled Podcast with Art.
And our 4 listeners would weep and weep.
No, they would just stop listening and we would totally shoot ourselves in the foot. No, we're changing our name to Cold Crit.
That's right. Cold Crit.
I have a lot to say that will totally undercut our rebrand here, so I'm not going to say it.
Why? Why would it undercut it?
Cold Crit. After my parents pointed out, when I told them about the new name, they pointed out that it sounds like my oma, my Dutch oma.
Oh, the cold cut thing.
One of the few things she would ever talk to me about was how we were having cold cuts for dinner.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, our podcast is now the Cold Cut, which isn't a terrible name either, except that it's about deli meat.
Yeah. No, Cold Crit. Nothing to do with meat. Got nothing to do with meat. Yeah. So I guess the impetus for the rebrand is, well, one, in a move that is extremely unlike me, I did not do a good amount of Googling for SEO purposes prior to us saying Untitled Podcast with Art. Let's go with that. Usually I'm better at making sure that names or things like that aren't already taken and that, you know, we'll have like some level of, you know, of searchability. Turns out there are already so many untitled podcasts in various and like niches.
I mean, in our defense, none of them is active now.
That's true. And then there is the Untitled Art or something podcast. That one is inactive. It wasn't it like a Art Basel podcast or something like that?
It was related to some institution. The point is, as you can see here, they're all hard to say.
Yes.
We thought we were making a cute joke about the naming convention of still lives. Titles are hard. And I know that it seems like any old schlub can start a podcast. And while I'm not saying that's not true, there is a lot more work than we anticipated to get it up and running. And the title kind of took a back seat.
Yes. Yeah. In my defense, I never thought we would get the first episode out. And we kind of just kept kicking that can down the road until it was like, okay, I guess this is what we're launching with. So from now on, going into the future episodes, we will be changing our name to Cold Crit. And we will be updating our various social medias and channels and platforms accordingly. So if you're not already following us in all the various places that you might spend your time on the big ol' internet, give us a follow, give us a like, and then you will be well situated to ride out this name change with us.
Also, we know that most of you are probably half listening right now, like I am usually when I listen to a podcast. We'll give you the instructions a few times. We'll make it easy for you.
Yeah.
Probably.
We'll keep making this point. So expect to hear more about it too at the end of this episode. We will remind you 1,000 times.
Chris, do you want to say anything more about the name itself?
Yeah, I am normally really good at naming things. Like one time I worked for a company and like we started a magazine and I named the magazine. Like this was the hardest thing I've ever had to name. It is really, really difficult to find a name that sounds good, isn't like weird and silly, and like encompasses the both mainstream media culture angle and the art angle that we cover. We've thought of 1,000 good names that are great for if it's just an art podcast, or 1,000 good names if it's just like a pop culture or media crit podcast. But with Cold Crit, we ultimately, I think, decided this was a good way to go because it's about that initial impression that media and things make. And I think especially with what we look at with art, it's often things that are in the background, or it's things that, you know, in a TV show or in a mainstream story, news story, the art doesn't come to the forefront as much, and people make passing assumptions and critiques of the work that they see without understanding the bigger context behind it. And you know, I think that with this show, I'm hoping to, you know, dive deeper into those things that people might normally only see for a few seconds, a few minutes, and expand upon that.
Yeah, that's a nice summary. It's also a Cold Critique is one name for a convention in art school, which is when everyone shows up and reads your work and critiques it, discusses it without the artist giving any kind of context for it. So it's a way to talk about art without context, which is an important tool in developing work and developing communication. So it feels appropriate here.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the name change that's coming up. I'm excited about it. I'm excited as a designer. I'm excited about the branding possibilities here because Cold Crit is so much easier to fit into a logo lockup than Untitled Podcast with Art. It's going to be good.
Or we could just go with what my dad started calling us, which is he'll ask me, hey, what are the art brats up to month, this week?
I do like art brats.
Yeah, maybe we'll get to that later.
Same. It's a good name, but like it only encompasses half of what we do. And I wanted more of a name that more encompassed the full spread.
Well, the popular media and culture part could be brats with a Z.
Dolls.
Those weird dolls without
or
noses.
Brat, Charlie.
Yeah. It's Brat Podcast. That word's not been used nearly enough in the
Art
past
Brat.
calendar year.
And that like green and the
Art is Brat.
Art is Brat. That was an episode we didn't do.
There was a lot going on last summer.
I didn't want to.
Another aspect of the name change is we started this podcast thinking, wouldn't it be fun to talk about art as it appears in movies and TV and such? And we've really been interested in talking about the more general visual culture sphere in a way, if you haven't noticed in our past 10 episodes, that isn't just about TV, film, etc. So this name change is meant to reflect redefinition of the show too, to keep us aligned with looking at social media, looking at more contemporary forms of media.
Yeah. We started out the seed, the little nugget of an idea for this show was, oh, what if we looked at art in like TV, movies, and eventually, you know, found that there was a lot of interesting stuff happening and like current events and popular media. And I'm still extremely interested in continuing to look at movies and TV and things like that. We will have some of those coming up this year. I'm excited about, but yeah, I think that I really love talking also about how art is showing up in the here and now, which is what we're talking about today.
Or at least in the last 2 months, because a lot happened while we were on our little holiday break.
Indeed. Justin Sun Part 3. No, I'm kidding.
The Justin Sun podcast.
Yeah, this is just a Justin Sun.
Oh my God, I realized after thinking about mostly him for 2 weeks, I haven't thought of that weirdo.
I think of him like every day.
Oh.
He's become my Roman
I think
Empire.
He knows. Yeah.
No, today he like upped his contribution to the Trump coin. So
it's a real scramble for
yeah, and
the president is the prettiest girl at the ball.
Yeah, and today also, I mean, so if you're listening to this, I mean, which you are, if you're hearing my voice, but we are recording this the day after the presidential inauguration. Everybody's got real bad feelings,
except for that one client I talked to today at work who said, "Happy New President Day," which
we're not really sure what tone that was delivered in.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't know what that is. Let's move on.
Yeah. Well, so prior to our break, there was a huge news story that I fear is getting memory hold really fast. But, I think people are still thinking about it, still talking about it. And that is the story of a young man who went and shot a CEO in cold blood on a New York City street. Simon, what can you tell us about Luigi Mangione?
Memory hole is partially active, but I can tell you that young guy in a green coat waited outside was it a hotel?
It was a hotel.
Early in the morning, like earlier than most people his age would have gotten up, because it was like, what, before 7 a.m., right?
Yeah, you can tell all the reading he was doing was really motivated. The Atomic Habits was like, I'm going to get up at 5:30 a.m. and I'm going to kill this CEO.
Yeah, I was really surprised to find out he was not, in fact, a grindset influencer.
I mean, he seemed maybe he could become one if he put his mind to it.
Anyway, this guy...
But then again, couldn't we all?
waited for the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, to arrive for a board meeting?
Annual investors meeting for the United Healthcare Group.
And as this guy approached the door, the young man who was later identified as Luigi Mangione allegedly shot him at least a couple of times with a gun that used 3D printed parts. Left at the scene was a backpack with Monopoly money, and that was about it. The
backpack was not left at the scene. The backpack was left in Central Park.
Okay, right. Because he fled on a city bike.
The city bike thing is, it was, they initially said city bike, but then it was like, one, you can't tell that from the picture we have, and two, I'm not sure that was confirmed as being true. So
and if that's not, and regardless of whether it's true, it's between like this and those two Turo car rental app bombings that happened in the past month.
I memory hold that real fast. That was, my God, that was 20 days ago.
Not that I have like much sympathy for Silicon Valley run rideshare companies, but Turo and Lyft have had a bit of a rough PR month.
I mean, I'm all for I love the e-bikes in New York. They're amazing. But yeah, so the words delay, deny, depose were inscribed on the cartridges of the cases used during the shooting that were found at the scene. And then a few days later, on December 9th, at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, he was apprehended after being identified by some narc working at the McDonald's, and is currently in jail, facing state charges in both New York and Pennsylvania, and federal charges. I'm just filling in anybody who was living under a rock or in a coma at the time, or maybe like when James Cameron, when he came up from doing a dive at the Titanic and Bill Paxton had to tell him that like 9/11 had happened, which is a great video. Find that.
There's a video of it?
Yeah, it's crazy because like Bill Paxton's voice, you can hear his voice in like, and you're like, oh, that's like my polygamous dad, or he's a tornado chaser. And then he's telling like you 9/11 happened. So you're like, well, that must be fiction.
Look,
anyway.
I'm not condoning those actions, but I feel like Bill Paxton describing 9/11 to me for the first time, like right after he heard it, would make a great sleep story.
Actually, yeah. It is really too bad we lost him so young. He would have been amazing at sleep stories. So, what does this all have to do with art? Well, it turns out Luigi Mangione is hot. So, there were a ton of memes immediately. Like, before we even really fully knew what he looked like, people were like, oh my God, he's hot. He's hot. We had like people like, oh my God.
It was based on that
It's
one photo.
happening.
That one photo that did him in, right? The one from the hostel.
Yeah, the one where
that winning smile.
Yeah, people claim, the news media was really quick to say like, oh, he was flirting with the hostel employee. But it was like, have you ever been to a hotel? Like, they often check your ID and things like that. Like when you're checking in, or like a hostel where there might be an age limit or a residency. Well, I guess it's not a residency requirement. It's a lack of requirement. Like when you go to a hotel and they're like, they have rules that like people who are residents of that city can't stay as like an anti-homeless measure. It only applies if you look poor. So just keep that in mind, I guess. So,
but when they saw that he was hot, they said, "There's no way you're poor with those teeth."
Yeah. No, they're like, "Go on in, go get your bunk bed." But yeah, I mean, this was the face that launched 1,000 memes. Once apprehended, we get to see Mangione's mugshot, and everyone loses their collective mind. We start seeing, memes about that in this one that's on the screen. What you want to describe what we're looking at?
So just for a little bit of context and a bit of a departure from where we were last year, I have pulled away entirely from social media feeds, not as performative virtue, but as I'm going to
not in response to
anything.
Every one of the social media CEOs going absolutely full Nazi in the last
it before that.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it coming for so long, but like, anyway, dear listener, he's better than us. Don't worry.
No, I'm not. I'm going to lose my fucking mind around the time of the election. So I put one of those little like tracker widgets that people are trying to get sober use on their phone. And now it's been like, 70 days or something. Anyway, I don't know the memes anymore. So a big motivation for me to do this show with you, Chris, is to show me them good memes.
I get to show you the memes. So what's this meme that we're talking about right now?
It's a format that I recognize from when I was still memeing. It's a picture of what I assume is the Sims computer game.
Yeah, it probably is the Sims. I never really fully realized that.
There's a woman seated at a desk and she's on like an old-timey like compact PC computer, compact with a Q from the 90s. And there's what looks like a swaddled baby in flames on the floor next to her. And the caption is, "Not now, sweetie. Mommy is watching the internet thirst for Luigi Mangione."
Yeah. So lots of like, oh my God, he is indeed hot memes that came out right after his arrest and his mugshot. And, like visual culture, meme culture was also quick to point out that like he gives good mugshot. And if you remember from our Justin Timberlake episode, the people love a good mugshot.
I mean, his mugshot is way better than Timberlake's, but also Timberlake was allegedly one margarita deep.
He was not.
Allegedly.
No.
Not even alleged anymore?
No. Timberlake took a plea. They ultimately pled to driving while, oh crap, what is the actual charge?
It's not as hot as it usually is?
Not as much of an idiot is basically the charge.
Not driving while idiot, like we've discussed.
It's essentially driving while under the influence of something, not alcohol. So we can't say he was under the influence of alcohol. It's like if you were on like a really heavy prescription medication or something.
Like
it's
some
like
kind of impaired.
Yeah. Ultimately, he got 25 hours of community service and about $750 worth of fines and fees.
He has that in his wallet.
Yeah.
Like in cash.
Well, it was actually really nice. We can't really say whether it was actually a part of his community service, but he volunteered for the Portland bike bus when he was.
Oh my God. Yeah. I saw those images.
Yeah, I know.
Why did we move away from Portland?
I know. It could have been on that bike bus.
I know.
They're always looking for volunteers. I know a lot of people who volunteer with that. So anyway, that's all to say. He had a lot of mug shots because he was transferred multiple times within.
We're talking about Luigi right
yeah,
now.
Luigi.
Not
yeah,
JT.
We've moved on from JT. He was transferred multiple times within like the criminal punishment system. And so we got like a lot of different mugshots, a lot of different commentary on said mugshots. But let's not forget, mugshots are bad, even if we like these personally.
Just because someone knows how to Vogue.
Oh, he's mewing.
Mewing?
Yeah.
Just because someone, we say mugging for the camera, but like that feels silly like for a mugshot.
Yeah.
But just because someone knows how to get a good photo taken of them doesn't mean mugshots are good.
No, exactly. You wanna give us a read of one of these mugshot memes that are up on here?
Yeah, I was laughing at the one you put up there because it says, "Did Luigi Mangione dethrone Stalin for sexiest mugshot of all time?" And it's easy to forget after the years, and I assume the vodka and the weight and the age and the mass murder of the Russian people, that Stalin was a smoke show when he was younger.
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I totally forgot what ooh. Yeah. So, anyway. I know.
I mean, if it was between him and, I mean, this was obviously before then, but like seeing Trotsky's photos, his rival Trotsky.
Yeah.
I mean, Stalin must have they must have just slayed whenever they went to whatever, the tavern or whatever.
Yeah. I'm trying to.
Back when they were friends.
Yeah. Yeah. And they were all like, ooh, ladies, we know things about politics and.
Yeah, I've read Marx. Ever heard of him?
Ever. Yeah. So, yeah, other than that, like typical memification ensued, evoking more things we've learned about him because he's hot. So, like, we get a lot of like, he's rich memes, a lot of he's Italian memes. He went to Penn memes, Ivy League schools. He has the same name as a Nintendo character. So, like, you know, we see somebody tweeting or Xing or blue skying. I don't even know anymore. We're not going to actually say tweeting or Xing. We're just going to say posting because we can't give that website any more oxygen. So there's a meme that of 3 shells like you would see in a Mario game, and they each say delay, deny, depose on them.
Well, they're the Mario Kart shells, the ones that you shoot
at
the
other turtle shells.
Yeah, the ones you shoot at other drivers in Mario Kart to make them jump up and lose their place in the race. Yeah, they can go boom.
Yeah, and the caption is the shells at the scene. And also another meme that's somebody doing the like Italian gesture, the like the
emoji, the finger pinch emoji.
The finger pinch emoji. But like they're holding a pencil upside down over a piece of paper, and it says the United Healthcare CEO killer Luigi Mangione writing his manifesto.
I know this.
Yeah, lots of like Italian stuff, Luigi stuff.
We're not here to review memes, but that one's just stupid.
I thought that one was hilarious.
That was hilarious. Okay.
I think
we are here to review memes.
Yes. Well, you know, memes are art, whether we like it or not. We aren't here to mostly review memes. I was just trying
on a 6-week-old story.
Yeah, I'm trying to get us up to speed on what beget the art we are going to look at today, which is essentially like we ran through a big cycle of visual culture really quickly. Like the is he hot? Oh my God, he's hot. Oh, he's Italian. Oh, he's rich. Like meme cycle. That all happened within the course of a few days. And then here's where we start to get into art beyond internet meme. If you just search like TikTok or Instagram, yes, as of today, you can search TikTok again.
Thanks, President Trump.
Nope. He didn't do it. It was his fault to begin with.
Not a stunt of any kind.
Yeah. If you just search like Instagram or TikTok or something, you will find that people are making a lot of fan art. A lot of it is AI generated at this point. But some of it is original work, whatever keeps you painting, I guess. But yeah, so like this is a screen grab where you can see like some AI stuff. You can also see that people have been going to town doing like original paintings and stuff of Luigi Mangione.
Sorry, is that one a tutorial on how to use like Procreate on the iPad, but to make an accurate Luigi Mangione portrait?
Oh, I'll have to learn that.
Yeah, he's being used for education.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. He can teach us so much. The stuff that I want to talk about in particular are the images that contain religious iconography. Simon, when you look at these images, what is it exactly in the visual language here that suggests they are religious figures to you?
I mean, they look exactly like Jesus with more Italian eyebrows.
And how do they look like Jesus?
Well, I don't know. Maybe he had the same eyebrows, but
we have no idea.
Definitely wasn't a thin white guy with a wispy mustache.
Yeah.
I don't know. You were Southern Baptist. You tell me what Jesus looked like.
White. Totally ripped abs.
Little mustache, ripped abs. Well, Mangione had like an 8-pack or some shit, right?
Oh my God, I know. Eee.
Not at the time of the shooting, but at one point there's that like photo of him
like shirtless. Yeah,
which you have to, well, I mentioned grind set earlier. You have to be that kind of person to be going for that.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, we're not talking about abs. We can't see any abs here.
No.
These are all images that you're showing me of what essentially is like kind of stylistically updated for modern sensibilities, but it's religious iconography of Jesus. There are candles, what do you call those? Those like prayer candles.
Oh, yeah.
I'm speaking as a secular person with Jewish upbringing. But those candles that they light like in Mexico and stuff.
Yeah,
and
the prayer candles, yeah.
That have like saints on them. But instead of Jesus, it's these photorealistic paintings and in some cases photos of a stylized Luigi Mangione. His eyebrows, there was speculation I remember over whether his eyebrows had been done by the other inmates in prison.
Yeah.
But here they've been even further done by the artist here.
Yeah.
So he's like got the Jesus robes on, except for like in one of them, his necklace pendant over his heart is 3 bullets that I assume say delay, deny, depose. But yeah, just imagine Jesus in a lot of like Renaissance era painting, but with Luigi Mangione, and that's what you have here.
Yeah, and so interesting that you say Jesus. Like, what about it suggests Jesus and not like other saints or...
Part of it's my unfamiliarity with other saints, like I said, but there definitely is a look to him. I mean, we're talking here about popular culture and imagery, and like imagery that really transcends necessarily like religion and, subcultures. Everybody, for the most part, knows what Jesus looks like. I couldn't really name say what a lot of saints look like.
Right.
So there's probably saints that apply here, but partially because of the longer curly dark hair, the complexion, the look, it speaks to me, a heathen, as being Jesus.
Yeah, these images are interesting because like they're clearly AI generated. And so the confusion you see looking at them is because of the confusion that like the AI, I think, has over like, is this a deity? Is it a saint? Are we canonizing him? Are we deifying him? Okay, sorry. This is an aside. The top 2 images I have on the left here are from an Instagram called GDogFX on Instagram, who creates this really awful Gaddafi.
Muammar Gaddafi's Instagram account, yeah.
Who creates like this really awful AI generated art that combines pop culture and religion. Like he's
Finally.
Also, yeah, I know. Also created like these saint images of like Lana Del Rey and stuff. Like who cares? Whatever. That's his whole thing. I don't know. But I just love that like this is one.
Oh my God.
Can you describe the image we are seeing?
It's like a triptych of 3 condensed versions of the Last Supper. The one at the top is clearly like, a bunch of TV and film gangster characters. I think it's Cillian Murphy as Peaky Blinders in the middle. It's got Tony Soprano. It's got Scarface, Mr. Robot, Walter White, Joker. Below that is the Joker with Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, a different Joker, Clockwork Orange, Fight Club. It's just like bro edgelord nonsense.
It's different arrangements.
Of the Last Supper.
Yeah, it's awful. I died when I saw this. And I just, oh my God. Yeah, I went through this person's whole feed. And like something I just love is that you can tell the exact moment Dolly, like the AI image generator, came onto the scene in this guy's feed. Like he was doing this kind of like bad Photoshop art for a long time that was just like, the same kind of themes.
Attention farming, yeah.
Yeah. Taking like pop culture-y things and putting them into like famous paintings and stuff. But then you can see the exact moment where there's a huge stylistic change and we start seeing more images like these Luigi Mangiones and stuff like that. And this incredible Last Supper triptych.
Yeah. I always say, like, we're not here to say what art is good or not. We're here to say what's art. I mean, obviously, like,
I'm in charge.
I got an MFA, so I could say that MFA Simon, am charged with being able to say what's art and what's not. But this is stupid.
Yeah, I am extremely comfortable saying that AI generated imagery like this is not art, where you're just typing in a prompt and saying, make the Last Supper with a bunch of gangster figures. It's not creation. It's
creation in the way that maybe like a funny tweet is. But
I think there's more.
An inflammatory tweet is, but it's not like it's there to drive attention, for clout, for clicks.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that AI can't be a part of a creative toolkit.
Yeah,
this ain't it.
Yeah, this episode is not about that, but I think there is extremely interesting, like, generative art with AI. I also think it's few and far between, like, what is actually successful.
I mean, in the sea of noise of just low effort, whatever the current term for clickbait is, yeah, it's harder to find the gems.
Yes. So kind of going back, though, to these images, I think there's a lot that's interesting here about what the AIs are borrowing from. And that's what I want to talk about. So, like, this image, can you describe the image of Luigi Mangione?
Yeah, on the left, it's an image that I was talking about earlier, where it's Luigi in this green kind of robe wrap.
It almost looks like a kimono, but like not really.
But like, I know this makes no sense, but like a biblical kimono.
Yeah, that mashup.
Yeah, I mean it's
a famous remix.
It's shiny silk, which maybe that's just because it recognizes he's Italian.
Well, I think it's also the floral pattern on it.
For that.
Yes.
Italians like wearing shiny silk suits.
They love shiny stuff. That's true.
But yeah, there's a floral pattern on it, so it looks like a kimono as well. He's wearing a pendant necklace that has these 3 fairly high caliber bullets, like not 3D printed pistol bullets, like rifle bullets from his necklace. And he's got, the halo you see in a lot of medieval and like Renaissance painting behind him. And the color palette is very similar to the other image you're showing me here, which is a painting of St. Jude, more in that medieval style of there's a not really clear perspective. It's a bit flattened.
Yeah, I think this is a modern icon card done in a medieval style.
It's got that feel.
Yeah, I couldn't find like any particular like provenance for this image. I think it's just like I got super deep into the world of like Catholic icons and stuff, and I'm like, whoa, this is crazier than Pokemon.
Isn't that where Pokemon came from?
No. Pokemon came from like bird watching.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But kind of.
Thanks for setting me straight there.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it's St. Jude.
Get your facts right.
It's St. Jude, who to me, I don't know, looks like Jesus. Maybe everyone back then, all these dudes had like tan skin, dark complexion, longish hair, a beard, and doughy eyes.
Yeah, I totally agree that St. Jude does look a lot like Jesus in this image. I mean, you'll find that like the faces and general like facial features of saints do kind of vary within like different depictions of like time and era. You'll find like kind of clusters of like, oh, it kind of looks like this, but then then it kind of looks like this, and it just depends. But I wanted to compare these icons because like I feel like I can kind of see here what it's borrowing from, what the Luigi Mangione image is getting at, which is St. Jude is the patron of lost causes and the protector of the hopeless, and is often depicted as wearing green, which symbolizes hope. And you can also see that like St. Jude's got that big necklace on here, the big pendant, in the same way that Luigi Mangione has that pendant.
You know who that figure is? The profile on the pendant coin for St. Jude?
I don't know if I have that on my note.
It's not important. I'm just curious.
Wouldn't it be funny if he was just wearing his own face?
It's like wearing your own band shirt when you perform. Like when I saw AFI at Riot Fest and Davey Havoc was wearing an AFI shirt.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, I think that's like officially not a thing anymore. Like I feel like more and more people are just like, whatever, I am rich, fuck you.
And also if people see me in a quick Instagram clip or TikTok, how are they going to know what band I'm in if they have it on mute?
Right.
Also, it means that scene in the teen comedy of the 90s, 2000s, Can't Hardly Wait, where the band Love Burger is going to perform at the end of the year house party. And there's a big fight in the band because one of them wants to wear their own band shirt. That makes no sense to this generation now.
No, I know. Yeah. They're like, yeah, you're only going to see it for like 7 seconds. You got to make an impact.
Yeah.
So besides being Catholic, which you obviously are, do you associate St. Jude with anything in particular?
Children's hospitals.
Yep. In 1955, childhood cancer killed more than 80% of its victims. Today, the survival rate is over 80%. So nice little reverso there. Never let anybody tell you things can't get better.
Thanks, St. Jude.
Yeah. The hospital's founder, Thomas, was a devotee who believed he owed his career to St. Jude. He had like prayed to him during some hard times and was like, hey, if you like help me out here, I will like live my whole life for you. Again, I was born Southern Baptist. So I don't fully understand this, but because he wound up to have this successful career, he founded a hospital in St. Jude's name. And cancer treatment, even today, and even with insurance, especially with United Healthcare, can completely disrupt a family's life and totally bankrupt them. So, there's hospitals like St. Jude provide patients care at no cost. And also many related expenses like travel are covered and keeping many families out of bankruptcy. So I think that this is so interesting because it's a lot closer to actually like accidentally saying something than I would think that an AI would be able to do.
Well, going back to my statement a minute ago about like, this is just turning a meme into visuals and like, has some artistry to it. Is there perhaps some artistry to looking at the situation here, at the story, looking at this person, seeing the context of all these religious comparisons being made with Luigi Mangione and saying that the story here about like near universal frustration of everyone below the upper class having with health insurance and healthcare in the US, there is some artistry to, prompt writing here, right? And this person might have made that connection intentionally and said, make Mangione a icon like St. Jude.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to say because meme culture is devoid of context. Like, in a way,
this feels pretty intentional to me, though.
I'm not sure it is. I can't decide because, like, with memes, you're so often putting it out into the ether with one sentence or two at the most that says like, here is this thing, here is my point. And so like we can't ever actually say with meme culture like, oh yeah, that we totally meant it to be St. Jude.
Well, it's the age-old question of artist intention versus reception,
but it's more complicated than that because it's not just an artist, it's an artist and a tool that makes its own decisions.
Right. But what I'm getting at here is I would not be surprised if this person said, make an icon in this kind of photorealistic, modernized, but also like 2010 style of Luigi Mangione as St. Jude.
And it's sad that we'll never know.
We'll never
know.
Because
I think
when things are put out there on social media, it's always a cold crit.
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh my God, it's the name of the podcast. He said it.
But like all context is collapsed there, right? So that's what we're seeing here.
I think that you might be giving the like meme creator too much credit, and that's fine. I could stand to be more generous, but like one thing I will say is like maybe they wrote in the prompt like, hey, can you like something about healthcare? And the AI was like healthcare.
Sure, yeah, that's also
St.
entirely
Jude,
plausible.
Saint, whatever. And like maybe that has something to do with it, but I don't think that it's that deep beyond like, somebody typing in to what is it, Dolly still these days? What do people use to create images?
Yeah, there are some people who can look at the output and tell you what the tools were.
Yeah,
I'm not one of those people. There's like Midjourney, Dolly. There are a bunch of other ones.
Midjourney is like a big one too.
Yeah,
I think Midjourney is more popular than Dolly even. So I just remembered Dolly was the only image creator I played around with when like they were first coming onto the scene. I've never touched Midjourney, so
I think Dolly's also the one that's like in ChatGPT.
Yeah,
and,
it is.
And Microsoft Bing and all that.
Yeah.
Whereas Midjourney has a bit more of its own textual interface.
Yeah.
And it's more specifically focused on image creation.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. So yeah, talking about like the symbolism of like the green with St. Jude and the pendant and stuff like that. Since a lot of religious art was made pre-internet, pre-photography, a lot of things.
Yeah, what's up with that?
I don't know what they were doing. Like, go farm or something. It was important that people be able to identify important figures in art by their commonly associated images or symbols. So like we talked a little bit about this in like the Olympics episode with the Greek pantheon. Like you're going to see Bacchus. He's going to be having wine, looking jolly. He'll have his like satyrs near him and stuff like that. You'll see Artemis pictured with a bow and arrow. Hera's going to have peacock imagery or a hawk or something. Apollo will have a lamb with him. Interestingly enough, Jesus also lamb symbol. How'd that happen? What? It's like art is crazy.
You ever notice how you never see Jesus and Apollo in the same room at the same time?
Oh my God. I know. So Jesus with this image, do you want to describe this image that we're looking at right now?
I mean, it's pretty much the same one as before, probably made with a different AI tool because it's got a slightly different photorealistic style. But again, it's the green robe. It's Luigi. He's dressed like what I now know is St. Jude. It's a bit more like there's more shiny gold paint in it. And
I'm sorry, I just noticed his fucked up fingers.
Oh, yeah, it's AI. He's got one really fat knuckle on his right middle finger.
And then like half of a index finger. And then like a really fat pinky.
I'm just going to say we are so screwed when AI can finally do real hands. Because until then, it's like, yep, I know this is fake because look at those hands.
This is why it's important to keep mistraining the AIs.
So you're saying we should cut off a finger to spite the AI?
Yeah. But also, like, whenever I get a captcha, I don't know why I put a K in it. It just sounds better. I like that. It sounds a little like Eastern European.
Because the AI are going to train themselves on our auto transcripts that we make our episodes.
Yes.
And if we say captcha enough, that'll just become part of what it sometimes thinks it's called.
Yes. And
that's how it works, right? We have to say it like millions of times, though.
Yes. Like how I'm going to keep Googling, is Elon Musk president? Elon Musk president.
Are you trying to will
division
it into
in the White House.
Oh.
I want to start a bot farm.
Yeah.
That's just like all day until it starts like auto completing. Like if somebody starts typing Elon Musk, I want like the first suggestion to be president. So sorry, I got really distracted. Before I was looking at this on a small screen, and so I didn't notice how like absolutely insane the hands are.
He's like,
and like the middle fingers kind of bleed into each other.
This reminds me of one of our friends who's also named Kristen, had a Halloween costume that was AI generated Kristen, where she just made a prosthetic extra finger to fit on her hand, or an extra hand to fit on her hand.
I've also heard people say like you should all have a prosthetic finger, extra finger, so that way if you get photographed doing crimes, you can claim it was AI. Not a bad idea.
People who have extra fingers, like the villain in The Princess Bride, which I know you haven't seen, but the villain is he's the 6-fingered man.
Okay.
But you think people who like naturally have something where they have an extra finger, like have a hard time convincing people that's them in the photos?
Or they're
all criminals.
I'll contact my friend from middle school's brother who had a little extra pinky.
I'm not trying to say these people are criminals.
No. But you know, we get all the calipers. The old calipers. They might suggest otherwise.
That joke just still goes equally as strong in 2025 as it did in 2024.
Look, all I'm saying is, can you take a good mugshot or not? It will tell us how worthy you are.
Make sure you get your fingers in the mugshot if the cops will let you.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And like, or a little like prosthetic, like second ear flap or something.
I'm just going to be Quato from Total Recall, where they have another head
I don't
growing
know
out of
what
my
you're
torso.
talking about.
You have not seen any movies, and you do a movie podcast.
I've seen some movies.
I've seen Twister with Bill Paxton.
We're going to do Twister next week. There's no art in that. Okay, returning though to the image at hand. In his fucked up hands, he's holding a heart.
Yeah. The heart it's identifiably a heart.
Yeah.
It's not fucked up like the fingers are.
It looks like it's made of red tinfoil, like an Easter chocolate.
Yeah, what's inside? Is it a Kinder Surprise?
It should probably be like an anatomical heart, but why is the heart a thing that the AI is invoking here? Saints are in art sometimes depicted with hearts, but like the anatomical sort, rarely with a little like Valentine heart like we see here. And it's actually, though, like way more common in images of Jesus Christ, Mary, and sometimes Joseph.
To have the anatomical heart?
Yeah. And that is because it is representative of the most sacred heart of Jesus. Okay, I did a little speed run of the whole Catholic religion for this episode.
Is it that different?
So what?
Southern Baptist?
It's quite different.
Yeah.
Because baptism is Protestant and we don't do icons. Yeah. Catholicism is so much cooler, man. Like, oh my God, I got really into this. I was like, you get all these icons, you get so many different things to do. With like being Southern Baptist, it was like hell.
What about toil? Did you have toil?
Easter. Not so much toil.
No, that's more Calvinist.
Well, and like it was born of that, but like that's been toned down in like today as much. But like it's all like burn in hell. Oh my God, Easter, Christmas. And like that's kind of the whole thing. Catholicism is like, oh my God, you got things going on every week. It was really fun to learn about. I didn't know a lot about the ins and outs of Catholicism until this episode. So the most sacred heart of Jesus is a widely practiced Catholic devotion. I mean, Catholic listeners weigh in. Is this like super, super common or like maybe not so? This is just what I read about it. But it's a Catholic devotion started by Saint Margaret Mary Alacoque in the 1600s. She saw visions of like Jesus and of his immaculate heart. She was so devoted that she carved Jesus's name into her chest with a knife.
Damn.
Twice.
Wait, same place?
Yeah. And signed a letter of devotion in her blood to Jesus. That's cool as hell.
I was going to say, like, my first thought was that's kind of metal. Then, because, like, you know, there's like those Slayer music videos of someone carving Slayer into their arm. But it also sounds like some live journal shit.
You think that's metal? She also, when the scars started to fade, tried to burn it into her skin, like so that it would become more permanent. She crazy.
Did Jesus like even give her the time of day ever?
Yeah, I mean, he came to her in visions and dreams, and so like
according to her.
Yeah,
They're best friends.
We're trusting a lot of people with religion.
I'm not expecting you to know this right now, but how did her contemporaries view her? Or was it like she's a saint?
Her mother superior was like, sweet.
Oh, she's a nun. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Some kind of performative.
Yeah, she was a nun. She started having visions, and people were just like, "Cool."
You know, I've got to say that there's something both kind of terrifying and comforting about the fact that when was this from?
1600s.
In the 17th century, we had the same clout farming that we have today, which is you do the most outlandish thing you can think of to rise to the top of the ranks of your convent, and then you become a saint.
Yeah.
Because you did some crazy shit for everyone to see.
Well, okay. But to be fair, sainthood, you're playing a real long game. Like the process doesn't even start until you die, until like well after you die. Like it, you know, maybe some people were playing for that, but it's a long game.
Not that long. How long did she live?
I mean, I guess I don't know exactly when she became a saint, but it wasn't until after she died.
I feel like you know what you're doing if you're carving names into your chest repeatedly.
Look, okay, here's what I think. We had a lot more room for women going through it.
Sure, that is much more charitable. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like in the 50s, it was like, oh, she crazy. Oh, we take her to the sea, and if that didn't work, we're gonna put her in an institution.
Yeah, electrocute her at a hospital.
Or lobotomize her or something. And then it was like, you go live in a nunnery and you have you do your thing.
And I definitely have heard those reads of, you know, convents, which is that if you don't fit in that part of history to the roles for women laid out for you, the convent is one of the other places to go.
Oh, it's a place without men, so
yeah.
I mean, and that's
just one.
That's also what that
the ratio is.
Yeah, that's what that really good movie, The Little Hours, is about with Aubrey Plaza.
The Canterbury Tales.
Yeah, where they're just ladies going crazy at a nunnery. I like it a lot. But speaking of nunneries, you want to describe this image that we have up about the vision of the heart of Jesus by Saint Margaret Mary Alacoque by an unknown artist?
I do, and our cat Eleanor very politely just finally got out of the way. Yeah, face planted below the TV instead of just smelling up on Jesus on the TV, so I couldn't see anything. It is Jesus in a church coming down from what's the throne in a church called?
There's no throne. Like the altar?
Yeah.
Oh.
Where Jesus sits. He's king, right? They always call him king. I don't know. Anyway, ignorant here, but Jesus comes from the altar, got a halo around him, got clouds around him. He's floating on clouds. His, what I assume is an anatomical heart, is like radiating in his chest, transparent, and beaming down on a nun with a halo.
Yeah. The nun is Margaret Mary Alacoque, and it's like a depiction of the image of her receiving his sacred heart.
And that was before the carving or after?
Before. This was like
canonically, yeah.
Her receiving the image, and then like she becomes so like devoted that she starts doing these like big displays of fealty.
Every one of his shows.
Yeah, exactly. And so the meaning of the sacred heart is like, we see this anatomical heart, and it's Jesus's heart exposed. in art, it's always kind of like centered on his physical, like heart, his torso, as a symbol of his infinite love for humanity, either directly on his chest. Sometimes it's like in his hands as more of an offering. Sometimes you'll see the heart surrounded by flames to represent divine love. Sometimes the heart is crowned with thorns to represent his greatest sacrifice. And sometimes the heart is emanating light. So you can see like a big mashup here in this image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus by Pompeo Battoni from 1767.
Yeah, it's similar. Jesus is looking right at you. It's like, it's probably in that previous image what the saint was. It's like her point of view.
Yeah.
He's got his heart or a heart.
Oh, that's an interesting point you're making. Yeah. The like.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the idea that it's her point of view.
Any saints. It puts you as the viewer in the perspective of the saint, which is likely a deliberate choice beyond just the formalities of iconography.
Well, and given that the title is The Sacred Heart of Jesus, I think it's totally fair to assume you are in Saint Margaret's position.
Right. I also want to point out that the heart here, you know, like you were saying, it's surrounded by thorns, like the crown of thorns for his devotion, right, or suffering. Yep. It also has a little crucifix coming out of the top, which really looks like the little plastic saber that goes through a maraschino cherry on the top of like a cocktail or a sundae.
I want to start a bar like Catholic that's like we put a little maraschino cherry and a crucifix.
Also good for killing vampires if any of those come around.
You know, you never know. I've seen that Nosferatu. I know to be on the lookout. So in this image, we see this is Jesus. He's got the stigmata in his right palm, so you can see the place where he was nailed to the cross. He's wearing the red inner robe, the blue outer robe, and he has the most insane cleft chin I've ever seen.
That's just his... We're talking about metal. He's got a metal goatee where it's like in the two prongs.
But it looks like it's his chin.
The beard.
I don't... Okay, but Tony needs to go back to art school.
Well,
because that is
Tony Pompeo?
Mr. Tony. Tony Pompeo.
Pompeo Battoni? Oh, Battoni.
The artist's
Battoni
name.
is Italian for the Tony.
Ah, okay.
I see what you're saying, but I have to assume also that, like, I don't really know when the advent of oil painting was. Yeah, chins. People didn't get chins until at least the 19th century.
Well, it's like how, like, Italian women, it was like really popular in like the Renaissance to shave your like forehead back like a little bit, a few inches to like
get that fat forehead.
Have a bigger forehead. Maybe for guys, it was like, I want the most insane cleft chin.
Which, I mean, he's clearly got a goatee. Like he looks like he would be into new metal in the 2000s.
Well, he doesn't have it doesn't go. I mean, there's like a shadow on the upper lip, but he has the most feminine little mouth, doesn't he?
Well, I think
oh my gosh.
Getting at with like,
if you like kind of hold your, you would think it might be a little lady. Anyway,
gonna cut this, but I really was hoping you were gonna say, "Look at Jesus's slutty little mouth."
He does have a slutty little mouth.
But I feel like part of this is, again, I don't know when the advent of oil painting was. I'm quite sure it was like 100 years before this, but
what?
Someone got. What?
This is the 1700s. It was way before this.
Ignore this.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, it seems like Pompeo Battoni is like, oh shit, you can blend real well with oils. I'm going to just go hard on this. And you really can't tell where the goatee ends and the skin begins. And it's a weird effect.
Yeah, it does seem like there's a weird filter on this image.
In the BBC production from like the 90s or 80s of The Chronicles of Narnia, the weird makeup on Mr. Tumnus, the satyr.
Yeah, and you can also kind of see how like the bottom of the robe, it almost looks like it's giving him like a tummy because of the way that like the blending of the light and the shadow has been done. Like it makes it look like more bulbous to me.
With the feminine mouth, it's curvy Christ.
Yeah, and the feminine little hands. I mean, who doesn't want to hold that hand?
AI generated.
No.
Has the right number of fingers.
Yes. I am like, I will say, like, looking at the image directly in front of me on my iPad versus looking at it on the screen at an angle, I can see that there are differences that I'm probably like, overall, Jesus looks more Borpo in the image, like directly in front of me, little more plump. Up on the screen, I'm looking at an angle. He looks thinner, and so there's definitely like some skewing of the image. This is why it's important to look at art IRL.
How long do you think it'll be in the lifespan of this podcast before it just becomes a hot or not for religious imagery?
Honestly, I think we're kind of there. 4.
So swipe left or right on
Swipe
this
left
Jesus.
on this Jesus, yeah. Swipe left. However, this fine lady is Mary, and she is a hottie with a body.
You can't see any of her body here.
No, you really can't, but she has a nice face. Similar, like, to the most sacred heart of Jesus, there is the Immaculate Heart of Mary. It's a similar, like, there's a devotion, there's like days of prayer, and I didn't really get super into looking into like what exactly all of the festivities and things are about, but it's similar to the Jesus thing. So this is all about observing and celebrating the interior life of Mary, which, like, very cool, very feminist. She was a lady with feelings. She wasn't just a vessel for her dumb son who went and got himself killed.
And in this one, it's very similar to the previous image.
Yes.
With the heart, it's got a flower crown around it.
Yes.
And rather than just a little cocktail toothpick crucifix, it's got a full stiletto dagger going through that heart.
Cool as hell. And you'll notice that this will come up later. You'll notice like the robes, very similar. She's got the red inner robe, the blue outer robe, but the hood is kind of like pulled up over her. I guess it's probably not a hood, but essentially it's like this outer robe that's pulled up over her head. It's also like this imagery is talking about like her feelings, her virtues, her virginalness, which, like, not as feminist, but we're working with like some weird mythology at the time. Her love for God and her maternal love for her son. Like it's emphasizing not just like a devotion out of like a religious devotion, but like she was a mother and she was his mother. And honestly, I think that's why I kind of vibe with Catholicism. It's like Mary was a real one.
Mary wasn't just a function.
No.
Yeah.
And like that's how a lot of Protestantism treats her. So, I think Catholicism for all of like has so many weird faults, and obviously we don't need to get into that all, but like it did make room for women in some interesting ways prior to the present day. Present day politics, I don't know, doesn't seem great. In the past, there was like more room for women to become saints, to have internal lives, and to like be treated in a way that in art and in culture that said like these people were also important. Mm-hmm.
So am I wrong in saying that it's pretty rare you see any of the Virgin Mary's hair? Because in this image, she's got the covering on her head, but you see a lock kind of falling over her shoulder.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's something
that's interesting. I totally didn't catch that. No, you really don't see her hair very much. And I mean, that's probably for reasons of like cultural, religious stuff, like, in the same way that many people today of different religions cover their hair. It probably would have been similar to the time that she was alive. I don't know. I don't know what all the like rules and things were, but yeah, it's interesting that you can see that little lock flowing out on the right side of the image.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you noted the sword piercing the heart. And I will note it's kind of an anatomical heart, kind of more
looks
of
like an apple.
It's sort of like, yeah, it's sort of an in-between of like, we were gonna go anatomical, and then we were like, never mind, let's make it a little Valentine's heart. And it kind of like exists between those two.
I mean, it takes a long time to paint something. It could have been like several days between.
He might have just gotten frustrated and gone, blah, 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 blah.
Fine, it's an apple.
Yeah, I don't actually have the info on the artist or anything like that for this image, but with the sword, the heart imagery with Mary is also commonly depicted with 7 swords or wounds that are in homage to her 7 sorrows. These are like sad events in her life. So I appreciate that, like, there are often, we're really devoted, like focused on in like religious art and iconography, like Jesus suffering. But like there is a lot in in art that shows her suffering and like the things she had to go through. So some of the sorrows are like when they had to like escape to Egypt. I don't know why. I'm not Catholic. And then also just things like her son being executed and things like that. So that's kind of the meaning behind the sword. And if you ever see images in art depicting Mary and 7 swords, it's referring to her 7 sorrows.
Well, this connection is a tenuous one that I'm about to make, but one that I think is relevant to some stuff we'll talk about later in this episode or in our next one. When you're saying that, about how we don't often talk about what the mother here went through, and looking at her expression here, fast forward centuries, it feels to me like that Depression era photograph of the migrant mother.
Yeah, I see that.
But there's more to say there about like, our tendency to reach into our cultural memories for familiar images and mythology, which that'll be a thread we pull through more of this episode.
Yeah, I mean, that's why
what we're talking about.
Yeah,
here.
that's why we look at art as humans. It's all meaning making. It's all sense making. It's why when we
pattern recognition throughout.
When we see an image, we look for the face first and foremost. Like we're always searching for those connections. And like you mentioned, the flowers that are around the heart as well. Mary is commonly depicted with red or white roses wrapped around the heart, which represents her purity and is also like when she has a crown, that's what like a crown for her will be made of. Okay. You'll also see Saint Joseph, which is Mary's husband, Jesus' stepdad. And
wait, you're making a joke though, right? That's not like a common term.
I mean, I've never heard him referred to that way, but is his stepdad.
Yeah. No, that checks out.
Yeah.
Who was it?
Your mother's husband. Like he not your dad.
All the nonsense of the horrible election cycle is mixed together. But was it Jesus? He's so worthless. But I forget his name.
Jesus is not worthless. No. He's in a lot of art.
Yeah, we're talking about not Matt Gaetz, the one who's vice president. Holy shit!
JD Vance.
JD Vance. Is he the one who's like making all those comments about like stepdads not being real dads, or is that someone else?
Oh,
about Kamala's kids, right?
Oh, yeah.
Kamala
I don't
Harris's
remember.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah, right.
Anyway,
because she isn't a mother. Yeah.
There's just something kind of delicious about the calling Saint Joseph he's the stepdad in the context of all the cherry-picked religious terminology and imagery in American politics today.
Yeah, the patron saint of stepdads. The patron saint of my mom's boyfriend, Rick.
Yeah, is there a
saint? Has lizards?
Yeah. No, I think that's Matt Gaetz.
Yeah.
Patron saint of dudes with inexplicable adopted sons from Cuba or Venezuela or wherever.
Okay, I don't know about this. We're not going to get into it. I'm gotta look this up later.
You don't know Nestor?
No.
All right. Maybe he'll make some art and we can talk about it later.
Okay, cool. One prodigal son that we will be making an episode about is Mr. Hunter Biden.
I only know him by his penis.
I only know him by his coke habit.
And with our powers combined.
Yeah, we will figure out what the fuck he's been up to in Dime Square. But anyway. Okay, you'll also see like St. Augustine and St. Catherine depicted with like hearts sometimes in classical art. All of it is like about Jesus being like, this is my heart for you. I give to you. Always like a giving and like but at the end of the day, it is Jesus's heart. And so like this imagery is really mostly strongly associated with Jesus, also with Mary, because that's his mommy. I didn't really have that much of a reason to share this image besides that it's really fucking cool.
Sorry, band name, Mommy Magdalene.
Oh yeah, write that down. Free band name.
This image is cool though. I mean, speaking of things that are metal, it's got St. Catherine after receiving the heart, holding it, and it is just gushing blood in her hand.
And she's like squeezing it.
Yeah, she wants that blood out of there.
Yeah, it's so cool.
And clutching her own chest where her heart is or would be.
Yeah. And note how she, like, where is she in space?
Oh, weird. There's like a weird perspective thing, partially because it's the 1400s and this was made. There's like a village church, and she's kind of floating on a cloud. I thought she was in a square, but if you look down, it's like an Escher painting.
Yeah, she's like hovering.
Yeah.
And that's intentional. There's Jesus in the upper, like, left-hand corner, bequeathing her the heart. He is kind of like surrounded in this like gold it's really like opaque and kind of weird. It's not like a mist, but I think it's kind of supposed to be. There's like some blood coming off of him. He's in his typical like blue and red robes. And like they don't look like they're in the same painting as the background. Like I love this image and I love like the background, the church behind them, and but yeah, they don't, the two planes do not meet.
And that's something I really love about this era of painting, is that wherever your eye will go to is kind of meant to be its own scene.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to connect to the perspective or photorealism or anything of the rest of the image, right? If you look up at the left corner, you've got a little scene that makes sense. But if you look somewhere else, like where she's standing, she might seem like she's in the square or floating in front of a wall. But if you look at the whole thing at once, it doesn't quite make spatial sense.
No. Yeah. I love everything that's going on here. And like you can see that like her head and Jesus are in the same painting, but then like her body is not. All sorts of weird things going on here. But yeah, this painting is by Giovanni di Paolo and from the 1400s.
So we're talking about the iconography and the heart. Can you bring us back?
We're back.
Great.
We are back right now. So back to the Bottoni piece. The one with Jesus holding his heart out. Notice that Jesus and Mangione in these two images are actually dressed in the same color of robes. This was Jesus's standard getup. He, in all of like the images we've looked at today, he's wearing a red underrobe, a blue outer robe. The blue outer robe is supposed to show like his divine nature. It's supposed to symbolize, his divinity. The red inner robe is supposed to be symbolic of that, like he took on a human form, humanity, and then offered the sacrifice of his blood. And like
he's full of blood. That's the robe.
He's full of blood.
Red robe full of blood.
And so like we talked about earlier, it was such a like important thing in art to be able to identify who somebody was based on what they were wearing or like the typical symbols. So that's why you always
you can't Google it.
No. That's why you always see Jesus dressed in this getup. You'll always see Mary dressed in the same getup, but with a slight difference with having her head covered and things like that. And so it's interesting that these AIs chose to depict Mangione as having Jesus's same robe color.
I mean, it's also possible they saw someone with Italian American complexion and thought, oh, probably Jesus.
Again, I mostly wanted to show this because it's a cool image.
This fucking rules.
It's so cool, but you can see, immediately who Jesus is in this image, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I know that because I'll describe it. I'll back up and describe it. So what I was saying before about like there being many perspectives embedded in this. I'm sure there's a term for this that an art historian who is not me or you could explain, but
multiplanetary.
I think it's a multiverse.
Multiverse, yeah.
Yeah.
Multiverse.
It's an image from 1308 to 1311.
Early 1300s, yeah.
So long time ago, there's like these little pastel castles. They look kind of like Sintra in Portugal, like these kind of pastel colored castles of the time. Those are all small, like little Lego sets on the ground. And there's what I know is now is Jesus. I mean, you can kind of infer from it that it's him. He's in the center. He's got the halo. There are two angels behind him, identified by the wings, kind of lightly drawn behind them. And he is holding his robe with one hand and pointing away as if to cast out a figure in front of him, which is, well, an entirely black painted demon, like an angel with longer, more leathery wings, and pointing him out away, what looks like from civilization, from the castles.
Mm-hmm, yeah. The piece is called The Temptation of Christ by Duccio. The Temptation of Christ on the Mountain. And so this is a biblical story of Jesus being tempted by the devil and blah, 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 blah. We don't need to get into the whole thing. I just love this image. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You put this on a vinyl cover and it's a sweet looking metal album.
Instant metal album. Yeah. And yeah, you also just like can identify who is who, the symbolism, and same with like, I got to show a Last Supper image. We've got a Last Supper image by Ugolino da Siena, 1300s. You can see everybody here is in like kind of the same green, red, blue color palette, but Jesus is the only one at the head of the table with that red inner robe, blue outer robe. You can kind of see like one guy maybe has a little, but not a lot. This is all to say, this is why AI can't make art. It has no idea whether it is canonizing him or deifying him. It does not know whether he's a saint or if he's a deity. It doesn't know. When you think about like the symbolism, the cultural history, hundreds of years and centuries of trying to like make sure that viewers understand what they're looking at. When you start mixing in things like this, it's like, what are we trying to say by depicting Luigi Mangione as Jesus himself? I don't think that makes a lot of sense for what we're trying to like communicate culturally.
Nor was it, I'm less confident in saying that was the intention of the artist, memer, prompt writer.
Yeah. Also, I don't think that the person who wrote into the prompt make Luigi Mangione Jesus. Like I don't have it here, but one of these images had the caption, Luigi Mangione, patron saint of healthcare. That's probably what they wrote into, roughly what they wrote into a prompter, and were given some of these images. And it doesn't make any sense that they were given these images of Jesus, of a deified,
with clear indicators, clear symbols of Christ, as opposed to Saint Jude, which might be closer to what you'd expect or want.
And like, I'm not Catholic. I'm not super invested in that, but like I am interested in like what it says about like, I think of this as almost a microcosm of what's going to happen to visual culture with AI. And maybe that's kind of like the thesis of this episode, is like, this is a kind of drilling down. We're looking at like what happens when AI doesn't understand the context, and like what happens when like meme makers and stuff don't understand the context of what they are actually creating, which is to say like when we make all of the like mass images of a canonized Mangione, and it starts bleeding into deification of evoking extremely strongly the images of Jesus, like that's where things start to get really, really muddied. And like, I think the power of meme and visual culture is that like you can look at an image and say like, oh yeah, it's just like that. And it's like, well, it's not though. To this day, the Catholic Church still makes saints. There are plenty of people in line for a sainthood. I don't think Mangione is going to be in that line. I don't think people who murder other people ever make it into the line.
Well, not who murder them on the street with a gun.
Yeah, who knows? There's a lot of like shady characters, but like in such a brazen, violent act, like no, that's not gonna happen. But like there is a nugget of something interesting there. So I want to look at an artist who I think actually does a really interesting job of working with images of saints and Jesus and connecting it to today in a way that is meaningful. This is an image called The Dead Christ in the Tomb. The top image here is by Kehinde Wiley, painted in 2007. The bottom image is by Hans Holbein, painted in the 1500s. What do you see?
They are two very long framed canvases. It's about as long and tall as a person lying on their back.
Yeah, about 6-7 feet.
So on the bottom, the older image, it's a fairly desiccated looking and rather dead looking, what I assume is Jesus Christ in a stone tomb, a stone coffin.
Yeah, I mean, the face, the hands, the feet, the wound, all the wounds are depicted as very realistic. It is dead flesh and it is starting to rot, I think early stages.
Yeah. And on the top, we have, looks like a young black man who is lying in the same position, but rather than being closed in what looks like a stone tomb, appears to be outside in a garden of some kind. The background is kind of a pattern of flowers and leaves. He's on a similar slab with cloth on it to the below image, but his flesh looks very alive and he's looking at you, the viewer, or, to use a photography metaphor, at the camera here, eyes open.
Yeah, they both have their eyes kind of open. Jesus is emaciated. His mouth and his eyes are like open and kind of like staring up. But this young black man is open. He's got his mouth open. He's got his eyes open, but he's looking. I mean, maybe there's a question of like being dead, but I see a lot of life in the image.
The way his mouth is open looks like he's breathing or about to speak.
Yep.
In contrast to the image of Christ below, where
it's kind of slack-jawed.
It looks like a slack-jawed, like there's no muscular function. His eyes in the Christ image are also rolled back off in the middle distance, whereas the image above, they're alive. They're looking at you.
Yeah, yeah. And he's also, the image in the top, like the Kehinde Wiley image is like, he's not emaciated. He looks extremely healthy. He looks extremely fit. This guy does not skip leg day.
Unlike Jesus, who, as far as we know, never worked out a day in his life.
That's true. There's something interesting about Kehinde Wiley's work in that, like, I don't know 100% what it's trying to say, and I don't necessarily care. I think, like, the juxtapositions are really interesting. What do you know about Kehinde Wiley?
All I can say is that the style and the subject matter looks familiar.
Yes.
Like, I believe I've seen some of this person's work at the Brooklyn Museum.
You definitely have.
But I can't speak much more to it.
So he is the artist who painted Obama's portrait. Do you remember that portrait at all? I can pull it up.
Yeah, refresh.
It was quite famous because it broke from a lot of typical, like, official portraiture of the time.
Right. And here we see a very similar kind of leafy floral background.
Yeah, he's very known for like immersing his subjects in flowers, in nature, amongst all of this like very vibrant foliage. So people listening will probably recognize the Obama portrait. And, I think it's very striking. It is a huge departure from the typical portraiture that we see with presidents. But yeah, Kehinde Wiley is really well known for putting Black subjects into art that we would normally associate with like whiteness and colonialism. And you're probably familiar with, it was a very similar image we saw at the Brooklyn Museum,
The
where
equestrian paintings.
yeah, like more like this, where you've got a Black man, he's wearing a hoodie, he's on a horse with like two legs reared up in the air. The horse is decorated in gold, like a gold saddle.
Yeah, kind of like a regal decadence that you would expect either from, for lack of a better term here, old-timey paintings of kings, or from like 90s, 2000s hip-hop imagery.
Yep. So it's kind of like combining the two and sort of like repositioning the Black character in classical art, but also like not putting them in clothing or anything that would suggest that it's an older image than it is. They're often wearing contemporary clothing, so like baseball caps, hoodies, t-shirts, and things like that. So with like the Kehinde Wiley work that we're looking at, he did a whole series of images of like religious iconography.
When you say, he's playing with colonial imagery, do you have examples, or can you talk about what you mean there?
So like the imagery with the horses. Horses are so often used to depict like generals and battle scenes and war. It goes into like, I can't remember all the exact formations, but like the way the horses' feet are positioned indicate things about the subject. So whether they were killed in battle, whether they won the battle, things like that. So that's really commonly associated with, interestingly enough, a lot of the images that I'm seeing right now. All of the horses' legs are reared upward, the front legs, while the back legs are grounded. So yeah, you can see a lot of that in his work.
Not knowing, the exact symbolism here really feels like the way we would see, Napoleonic art, or like generals being depicted.
Yeah. So yeah, looked it up really quick, and when the horses got both of its front legs raised, that indicates a wounded rider or a rider who survived the battle. And then if the horse has like one leg raised, that means something else.
But I think importantly here, it's a lot of the images we saw, the horse is rearing on its back two legs. And what you just pulled up said that it symbolizes power.
Yes, absolutely. Kehinde Wiley works with a lot of that kind of symbolism, and the imagery we're looking at was kind of a little bit of a departure into more like religious iconography.
Right.
So, we have like this of Saint Gregory Palamas. We've got the Kehinde Wiley featuring like a young man. He's tattooed pretty heavily. He's shirtless. He has a like book with him. And it is set in, I don't know what this is called. What's it called when a painting gets like a frame that looks like a little house?
I don't know exactly, but I typically think of those as an icon.
Yeah, it just kind of feels like an icon. And like he gives the people like their own name. So like this is St. Gregory of Palamas. The icon says Eric Murphy, the subject's name, and he's surrounded by flowers and like typical Kehinde Wiley fashion. And yeah, he's got this kind of like tome with him.
Is that Eddie Murphy's son, Eric Murphy?
I don't know.
Looking it up really quick, it's Wiley's recreation of St. Gregory Palamas, a Greek monk and theologian of the Eastern Orthodox Church. Maintains some of the characteristics and attributes of the saint. His right hand is raised in benediction, while his left hand holds a book. Rather than a book of the gospel, though, Murphy carries an art history book, a bookmarked copy of Icons and Saints of the Eastern Orthodox Church.
Yep. So directly referencing the original. Again, I don't really know like the whole message or anything. I tried to do some research here. Didn't really find like a ton that said like this is exactly what he was meaning to do with this work. And that's fine. I'm okay with the mystery. But I just felt like, this is an artist who took this kind of like, he did have like a point of view about like the way Black people are not depicted in religious art and brought those together in a way that I think is really interesting and much, much more meaningful and successful than like sloppy AI art that doesn't consider. And like those AIs are probably trained on Kehinde Wiley's own work.
Yeah, probably. I mean,
absolutely.
I feel like what we're seeing here, to probably egregiously oversimplify, like with the Eric Murphy example, is there is a recontextualization of both the art and the Black male image here by mashing them up, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like as far as message goes, I mean, it's almost like item for item, like symbol for symbol, the same image, except for the figure and the name. So I feel like as far as meaning goes, you can infer what the artist is getting at. There's probably more to it, but that's what I get from this.
Yeah. Yeah.
As far as the AI version of this, like, it's stripping of context. It's stripping of meaning.
Yeah.
It is this death by 1,000 cuts of just small bits of context being removed to farm attention.
Yep. Yep.
There's more to say here, but that'll be for another time, another episode.
That will do it for this episode of Untitled Podcast with Art, but will soon be Cold Crit. Update all of your socials, your subscriptions. If you need to subscribe to things, do that, because we are changing our name and it might be a little confusing to you one day when you look at your phone and you're going to go, wait, what is this? I don't know this. And then you'll forget. So do that.
We changed the name to Cold Crit, the podcast formerly known as Untitled Podcast with Art, now called Cold Crit. Don't worry, it's still us, Chris and Simon. You know us. It's not weird.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, follow us wherever you still need to do so. And that way you don't have to wonder when the deed is done, when our name's changed. So subscribe on Spotify or YouTube for access to the videos of all of our shows, where you can see images of the work we're talking about. We talked about a lot of art in this episode. We talk about it's probably confusing if you don't have the slides pulled up. Maybe you're okay with that. Maybe you're half listening. But if you're not okay with that, or if you're just curious, check us out on Spotify or YouTube, or subscribe to our Patreon, where you can get a PDF of everything.
And that way you don't have to, if you're more of a listener rather than a watcher, you can take a little peruse through the PDF, be like, oh, the image. Okay, I got what they're talking about. And then you can reference it later or not. And then you're good to go.
So regardless, our audio versions are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow us on Instagram, currently at Untitled Art Pod, but
it's changing.
We'll let you know. And if you like what we're doing, if you want to hear more of it, please support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Untitled Art Pod. We'll give you the new URL when we have it.
Our theme music is by Layers and Layers, and you can check them out on Instagram, and you can find us online currently at untitledpod.art. We haven't secured a new URL yet. Maybe it'll be like coldcrit.art. We don't know, but that's it. So see you next time.
Chris, we nailed that closing.
Yeah.
We made it really clear. People are going to be way less confused than they would have had we not said anything.
People didn't know exactly what to do and where to go and who to be.
Thanks for sticking with us, everyone. See you next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.